Hey, Slandra, y'all. Welcome to Tuesday night, Scotch on the Bayou. I'm so excited. I can't even stand it. Because we're having a really cool show tonight. Super excited to be able to have a guest on to talk about one of my new obsessions, and that would be American Single Malt whiskeys, made here in the good old USA, and all that goes into that category. So we're really going to kind of dive into the category a little bit, but this starts a new series. So I'm going to have some new shows and topics coming out, but we're going to be spotlighting some of the makers of American Single Malts. And when starting this and asking folks to come on and having invitations sent out, getting some really great responses. I'm super stoked about that. But I have to tell you, I really wanted this one to be the first one because, spoiler alert, I really love this distillery. So we're going to be delving into Andalusia whiskey, and a big shout out to my buddy Zach Andrews, who gave me my first bottle of Striker. And we'll talk about that bottle and a lot more. But I wanted to say hey to folks that are already joined us in the chat. Donner Pass is already here. Hey, friend, good to see you. And also Mark JG. I know you're a big fan of this distillery as well. Mark and I and a good big crew that went to the Bastards Ball last year spent an afternoon at Andalusia, and beautiful place. And yeah, so we'll talk more about that. Yeah, it is an ocean moment. Brian Kilco, hey Brian, yes, he is rolled up here, sitting there waiting. We were a little late because I had to chat with him for a little bit. I couldn't stand it. Yeah, and good morning. Hey, Andrew, thanks for again being up at 2 a.m. from the UK to come and talk about American single malts. And great to see you. Whiskey Franco Martin is en route somewhere, hopefully safely driving or in for the night in his big travels that he's in the middle of. Kathy's in. Hey, friend. Kevin Cullen and George. Oh, hey, George. Great seeing everybody. Daniel Hayes, another one. Glad you could be able to jump in for a live for a bit and say Aslange, y'all. That's true. And this guy, your ears must have been burning because we were just talking about you, Dustin. Ty they're great friends, and Dustin's a good buddy of mine here from Louisiana, who's landlocked over in Texas at the moment. But yeah, so I'm really excited seeing everybody coming in. Golly, it's great seeing folks. Jimmy Jazz is in. Thank you, friend. I know you've had this, I think, and if you haven't, let me know because I'll make sure we'll find you a way to get there somewhere. Canada is also in the house. Another Canadian here. Hey, Chad. Good to see you, friend. So that Striker was one of them that I brought up to Canada, if you remember. Good stuff. Yeah, good stuff. So yeah, let's get after it because I'm real excited to be talking about American single malts, what that category is, and knowing that, it's really pretty booming right now. There's quite a few new producers. There's folks that have been out there doing this for a little bit of a while. And there's also some really big guys that have decided, American single malts seem to be a pretty good idea. Let's get in the game. And but those aside, I want to talk about the smaller versions, the smaller crafters. And I say crafters because they are the handmade whiskey makers, the quality, the flavor, the consistency, all of those things, the variety, what they get to do with playing with cask. These folks really get to play with their whiskey. And being able to go out last year to Andalusia and see where this whiskey that I really enjoy was made was really eye-opening. And you could tell some cool things are happening out there for sure. So without any further ado, I would like to invite and welcome Ty Phelps from Andalusia. Hello. How are you?
Thanks for having me on Scotch in the Bayou.
Well, thanks for coming in. I really do
Yeah.
appreciate it. The more that we can preach the good word of single malts from the US, I think the better. But yeah,
Amen to that, sister.
and I was telling you, I was kind of prepping him ahead of time and saying, we're real chill here on this channel. But I'm like almost giddy because there's so much I want to talk about. But we're just going to kind of ease into it, and we're going to ease into a dram first and foremost. So, um, I have a couple of things poured. Um, but what do you want to start off with? Is there anything particular you'd like to pour?
Oh gosh, I'd like to start kind of at the start of our core lineup, and I'm actually drinking a variation of that right now. Our triple distilled
Okay.
is our Irish style single malt, and it is a single malt. We don't use any unmalted barley or other grains like can be common in a lot of Irish style whiskeys. But this is kind of our homage to Irish whiskey and kind of our nod. It is slightly Americanized, like a lot of our products, and so we like to call it our Irish American whiskey. Because
I
as
love
you
it.
can tell, I've got some of that going on up here right now, and so
A little bit.
a little Irish American in me, and so yeah.
Okay.
So I'm actually cheating a little bit and having a little special version of it. We partnered with Jake Clements, the founder of the Texas Whiskey Festival, and this is the Tejas version of our triple distilled. And Jake does a Tejas release with a different distillery every couple months, and really been some awesome projects that he's been doing with a couple different distilleries. I think we were the third or fourth, and this
Okay.
one was finished in mezcal barrels, and so it kind
Ooh,
of really completes that kind of Tejas theme that he's got going on there. So
very
the the,
interesting.
the triple
Light and
distilled is a
smoky.
yes. The triple distilled is a beautiful canvas for finishes and other kind of fun projects because it doesn't have a smoke component to it. We lovingly call it our gateway whiskey because that third distillation that it gets really kind of lightens the body and the flavor and the character. And just makes it a little more, easy drinking. And so we lovingly call it the gateway whiskey. And so that also makes it a beautiful canvas, kind of a blank canvas for finishes as well.
That's very. I love how you talked about it being a canvas because I think it's interesting to see how makers as yourself will pair their spirit with certain types of casks and what could or could not overwhelm it, or underserve it in ways. So that's always been very fascinating to me because to be able to match the spirit with what you want to get out of it with that cask maturation.
Sure. And it's sometimes it requires some experiment, and you might try things that you wouldn't expect. There's kind of a long tradition in Scotland that malt is not appropriate for new oak, and I might disagree with that a little bit, but I think if you kind of get caught up in more traditional pairings sometimes, and you don't, it might prevent you from kind of striking out and trying something new. I don't know if you saw what I did there, but striking out, the striker is kind of a new oak single malt whiskey, and so we've got several different. Talking about the cask on this one, when we first started making it, we didn't want to do new oak with it. But a lot of them, we didn't have any used casks of our own. So we were getting used casks from some, major distilleries and also from Garrison Brothers. They're right down the street from us. But Garrison and others, the major bourbon guys really use their barrels. There's the barrels we were getting didn't have a ton of life left in them.
Mm.
And so, even with Texas hot aging 3-4 years, it was looking like Coors Light. It's, which is fine. There's nothing that says a whiskey has to be a particular color, but, we felt that we needed just a little more color, mainly for the American market, but we wanted a little more flavor
Right.
too,
Yeah.
that often accompanies that color, you know, a little more vanilla and a little more, you know, barrel character and oak and baking spices, things like that. And so we would do a blend in the beginning of new and used oak. Don't tell the TTB. Hopefully, we don't have any TTB folks on here, but that's what we did at first. and so, but now we're using exclusively our own used casks, which provide have a little more life in them
Okay.
than the other used casks that we were finding.
Very cool. So the is that a single barrel version that you have then with the
Yes.
mezcal
Yep.
cask?
It was. Yep.
Um,
Single barrel. We just had one, but he actually brought us 3 mezcal barrels, and so we're doing 2 complete maturations, so
ooh,
that it's going to get 3 or 4 years in the mezcal barrel, and then we just did one of those as a finishing cask.
oh man. Well, I actually happen to have by way of our friend Dustin, I have the Clear Lake Scotch and Bourbon Society triple distilled
Oh,
version
nice.
that
Okay.
comes
Yeah.
in. Yes, and it is so delightful. It's very crisp and it is light and I just it's got like that back end of a creme brulee, like the crunchy bit that you have to break with a spoon.
Mm-hmm. If I remember correctly, was that one new oak? Does it say on the sticker there on the
Probably.
corner? Oh, sorry, I busted
I
you.
know. No, this is the ex maple syrup barrel.
Okay. Yep. Yep.
That's where I'm getting the creme brulee, I bet then. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
and that got, I think, full maturation in the maple syrup barrel. It wasn't just a finish. I think it got 3-ish full years in a maple syrup barrel. So yeah, that one was beautiful.
goodness.
And it's not like this maple pancake bomb. That's what I kind of love about it. You know, I even maybe struggled to find that very specific maple flavor, which I'm glad, honestly. I didn't want,
Yeah.
you know, like maple flavored things can be very intense sometimes.
But
It's
I think
good,
it's
but
more like on
you
the
know.
finish. It just kind of has
Yeah,
that little wisp of it on the finish. It isn't a pancake.
it's kind of
It isn't pancake juice in a bottle for sure.
right. Yeah, no,
Um,
it's almost honey and agave nectar
yes.
a little bit.
Yes.
A lot of affiliated things that are, you know, kind of like that. So that was a really
Exactly.
fun one.
Well, let me jump over here real quick because we have a new Camp Drammer member. Those are the members of the channel that help us out. Hey, Chris, thanks so much. And big Slancha, y'all, for joining the channel. Appreciate it. Welcome to the craziness. Yeah. So, well, let's go back to you are about to have a very big birthday, like at the end of this month for the distillery, correct?
Yes. Yep.
7
Number 7,
years?
lucky 7.
That's
Yeah. No, it's
awesome.
exciting. So we'll be doing our anniversary party the last Saturday of the month. So September 30th. Yep.
Wonderful. So, one of the things I love about many things I love about your whiskey, but you're very transparent. And, on every label, which we'll get into the labels later because I love the label designs. But you talk about this is a 3-year, this is almost 4-year, this is a 5-year whiskey. At 7 years, I mean, you've got I've got a 5-year-old whiskey on my shelf here.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those don't come out if with a company that's only been going for 7 years. What are
Yeah,
you
sure.
looking at as far as cask maturation length, time, maybe keeping your core expressions, but we'll kind of get into more, but like keeping them at a certain age, or are you looking at, the goal of a 10 or a 12 year at some point?
Yep. Yeah. So great question. We're actually, a lot of that is changing as we speak because a lot of all of our aging at first was done in shipping containers. And so as you can imagine, in Central Texas heat, they were like, imagine a locked car on a summer day. I mean, they were 140, 150 degrees probably. And so we were getting some great maturation. We really felt that we'd even kind of reached almost the limit in some of our new barrel stuff at around 4 years. Just started getting really intense oak, started getting tannins, a lot of intense cinnamon and baking spices. And just based upon our mash bill and the proof that we had, our entry proof, we were feeling like 4 years was kind of going to be it for new oak. Now, for used oak, I think the sky's the limit, and so we still haven't reached the limit for that. But we just built a new rick house, and so things will be changing for us just because the environment will be changing. We invested in a really cool system, a rack system, because we want to really be able to access all of our barrels all at once. And if you palletize your barrels, you can't get to them.
Right.
If they're on barrel racks, then you're constantly rotating and shuffling them around. And so we've got a cool system, a rack system that we imported from France. And so our new rack house will be able to hold 1,000 barrels, and
Wow.
we can sample any 1,000 at any time. And then the bottom barrel can be pulled out of a stack of 7 barrels at any time. And so any barrel can be, filled or taken in and out without having to move any other barrel. And it's going to just look really, really cool as well for tours and for folks to see. So we're really excited about that. But the environment's going to be a little bit different. And so that's going to be a metal building. And so we intentionally, obviously, didn't insulate it. There's no power. It's a dark building. And so we're looking for as much heat as we can get. But I think we're not going to get quite the same amount of heat as we were in the shipping container. And so I expect our aging times to lengthen a little bit now. And so that's going to be a learning experience for us. And we're just going to have to stay on top of those barrels, especially, a lot of our barrels we have now spent most of their life in the shipping containers. Now they're being moved into the rick house. And so there'll be there'll be a learning curve over the next 2 or 3 years.
That they're going to have more air circulation, theoretically cooler because of more air circulation. Humidity is going to be different. Yeah, that's going to be.
And then in the building itself, we'll finally have variation. In a shipping container, you don't really have a lot from top to bottom. It's only 10 feet tall,
right.
If that. And then the new building, though, is going to be a lot taller. And as we're working in the building and we're setting up these racks, as you climb to the top of the rack, you feel that it's 20 degrees hotter up there. And so we're going to actually have the gradient heat that rick houses classically have, like a Kentucky rick house would classically have. And
will you do a rotation, or will you?
We may not necessarily rotate them, but we'll definitely strategically place them. And I think whiskey that just thinking off the top of my head, I can see us aging some whiskey that we need a little faster to be a little higher towards the top, and then maybe something that's going to age a little longer, we might put lower. And so that's going to be experimenting as well. We can, put several different releases or one release in several different places and kind of see how it ages differently in the rick house. So, I was a craft brewer for 15 years before this. And so it made sense to be transparent because there's nothing to hide typically in craft beer. And it was kind of a surprise in whiskey to see how much song and dance some distillers do and how much there is to hide. And so now we love questions, and really the more questions people ask, usually the better it makes us look. So
I'm moving on to the Paladuro. I did want to ask about the start. You and Tommy from working in the brewery, and then sitting down and deciding you wanted to do a distillery. Like, what were you drinking that night when you decided you wanted? Were you drinking beer, or were you drinking Scotch, or I'd
love to say it was Scotch, but it was probably beer.
Okay, well, it started with some barley.
we transitioned very quickly, and as I feel that as everyone gets a little older, they maybe drink a little bit less beer and a little bit more whiskey as they age. And so we kind of had that in mind. Obviously, we were noticing that ourselves, but we had that in mind just with consumer taste. We also have now, almost an entire generation of craft beer fans that are starting to age out of craft beer a little bit, and are looking for other alternatives. And the numbers really bear out there. So, we feel like we're placing ourselves kind of in the right place at the right time, hopefully. But it also, from a market perspective, but also kind of aligned with kind of where we were heading personally. I'll always be a beer guy. I'll always enjoy a good beer. But I'm definitely noticing myself cutting back a little bit and drinking a little more whiskey.
Well, I just know that I can have more than a couple of these and I'm fine the next morning.
Right.
Some of
Yeah.
the other stuff, not so much.
Yeah.
So getting through that, then why, when you say, okay, we're going to start a distillery, why malt? Not necessarily
Yep.
something that is grown in central and, the rolling hill country of Texas, when corn is much more plentiful, easier to source, and certainly cheaper. Why
Yeah.
malt?
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many bourbon distilleries opening up all around us. I think ultimately it kind of it came down to, honestly, I'm just not a big bourbon guy, and my business partner Tommy, he's not either. And we respect the category. I can
Absolutely.
appreciate a good bourbon. It's the American whiskey, and but we just didn't feel like it was smart for us to try to make something that we didn't really love and didn't have a passion for, and realistically thought we could never really have a passion for. I love the distilled spirits industry and making distilled spirits, but at the same time, when you get to sit down and enjoy your product, there's just something really special about that. And so we wanted to make what we liked because we felt like we could be better at doing that. And so and then another side of that is that's the experience, the production experience that we had.
You did what
Spending
you
15
knew.
years. Yeah, right. We already knew that part. And spending 15 years in craft beer, you've got 80% of what you
You got
need.
your wart.
And incredible. Yeah. And I think a lot of, and I noticed this with new distillers that get in distilling that have no background in milling, mashing, fermentation, is they just think that part's super easy. And all you got to do is just, get some grain and some water and throw some yeast in there and you're done. Well, I usually they'll learn pretty quickly that that's really one of the hardest parts. And, you can't make good whiskey from bad beer. We get breweries calling us all the time saying that they've got a bad batch of beer. What do we want it to make whiskey? And the answer is usually hell no, because, you need good beer to make good whiskey. And so there's a lot to, an all grain mash and then a proper fermentation. And
There's
so I
just
think,
so
having
much of
that
that
piece,
influences that taste so
it
much,
does. Yep.
especially in the fermentation area, between the type of yeast. And I mean, if I know I'm preaching the choir here, but the
Yeah.
geeky part of that I get all about.
Yep.
The length of fermentation. I mean, what is y'all's normal fermentation length? Or
So we
does it
normally
vary?
do about a week, and most of the aggressive yeast fermentation is done in the first 3 days. And then we do get a decent amount of wild yeast and bacterial activity. And so we don't do a boil. And that's one thing that is different from making a beer and making a malt whiskey is you'll do your mash and then you'll lauter and sparge and run off and make your wort. The brewers will boil their beer before fermentation to sterilize it. And we don't. And so even though the mash is at 152 degrees and you'd think that's, pasteurization temps, you get quite a bit of bacterial and wild yeast activity just from the grain itself. There's all kinds of wild yeast living on and in the grain, and we'll get that to travel over. And so we do get some acidification and some bacterial activity. With our yeast, it's pretty much finishing dry. There's not much left for the wild stuff, but we do want that wild activity just for a little bit more character and a little more ester production, a little more flavor production. So.
Oh, you got character. This whiskey's all about character. So Well, awesome. Well, so core range, if I remember, the triple distilled your Irish American
Yep.
ginger loving
Yeah.
version
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Well said. Yep.
Um, then Striker, which is your smoked,
Mhm.
correct, with what I love. So I spent 14 years outside Dallas. So that's why this accent, you'll hear a long I every once in a while, the white right like.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm right back home, Texas. Um, but the mesquite, I mean, there's nothing for, I mean, I think some people outside of the Texas realm may only be able to relate to mesquite and barbecue, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Applewood, I kind of think of the bacon kind of thing, but you use oak, applewood, and mesquite wood on smoking, correct? If I remember.
Yeah, because we want to build kind of a layered approach to the smoke. Just like any flavor, just one kind of smoke can be fairly one-dimensional, and so we kind of build a profile by starting with the base, the body, and that's oak, and so that's probably 50% of what's thrown into the firebox.
Mhm. Okay.
Then we want flavor, so we've got body. Then we want flavor. That's apple. And the apple is just so beautiful. We love throwing the apple chunks onto the fire, and just such a beautiful aroma. I mean, it just smells like a smoked chicken or bacon, like you mentioned.
Mm.
And then finally, the accent is mesquite, and so that's only about 20% probably. Mesquite is sharp.
Mm.
You got to be careful with it. You can overdo mesquite, and so we feel like by having that carefully layered approach of body and then flavor and accent, it really gives a really well-rounded, much more interesting smoke profile. And I'll give credit where credit is due. That philosophy comes from Corsair Distillery,
Okay.
and they are an incredible craft distillery. They have locations in Kentucky and Tennessee, I believe.
Yeah, are they
And
outside Nashville? Aren't they up in
yeah,
Nashville?
I believe
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Yep. And
Okay.
I mean, I mean, one year they made 300 different whiskeys, just by making a different whiskey every day, and so they're doing all the different grains and the smoking, and they've got a great book out there. And man, now that I put myself on the spot, if you give me a minute, I'll alt
Okay.
brews. Yeah. So
Okay. Got you.
the alt whiskeys, I believe that's what it is. Yeah.
Alt
Alt
whiskeys.
whiskeys. Yeah.
That's one way to play mad scientist. I will say there's I was over in Scotland this summer, and I took 3 bottles with me. Thanks to British Airways losing everybody here knows about this story, but British Airways lost my bag for the first of 3-week trip. So the first
No.
week of folks did not get to enjoy this, but I took 3 bottles. I took a JT Malik rice wine from here from Louisiana. I don't know if you've had it. It's very interesting. Um, really tasty. A Still Austin cask strength bourbon,
Nice.
because I'm a big fan of Chris and his
Mhm.
whiskey. And I
Yep.
took Striker because
Oh, nice.
I wanted them to know. I wanted all the Scots that I encountered
I
to know.
love it.
And I ended up leaving that bottle with Alistair Day, who is the founder of the Isle of Raasay distillery on the Isle of
Oh,
Raasay
wow.
outside
Cool.
Skye.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
they started 1 year after you did and are
Oh,
making
wow.
incredible Scotch. Incredible. But the quality that's coming off their still is where is the reason their young whiskey tastes so good. The quality coming off of your still is that same premise in my eyes. Because if it's not coming off the still, there's not, you can have best cask in the world. And it's just like putting lipstick on something that ain't gonna work,
Yep.
you just
And
do
we
what
kind
you
of,
can do.
as we're doing our cuts, we've got that in mind. We know that this is going to be a 3 or 4 year whiskey. And so we're probably a little more conservative with our cuts than a Scotch distiller who knows that it's going to be spending 12 or 13 years in a barrel.
Right. Yeah.
Especially with tails, nobody wants heads in their cuts, and heads don't age very well, don't age at all, don't age out. But tails really turn into very interesting things over a long period of time.
You get some
And
quirky stuff there, right? Some
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
quirk and some funk
sometimes
and
sort of the smoke hangs out, and
yeah.
and so we'll dip in as much as we're comfortable. But I'm sure we're doing tighter cuts than a lot of the Scotch distilleries are, because we know it. It needs to be consumed at a younger age,
Right.
for sure.
Well, Alistair really enjoyed it.
Awesome.
He was very surprised and very much enjoyed it. Actually sent me a picture a couple days later saying I'm finally able to chill out. This is super whiskey. So kudos for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
um,
Yeah, we were lucky to get that whiskey got top 20 whiskeys in the world from Whiskey Advocate magazine last year, and so we were really lucky, and that changed our lives, and it's changed our total production schedule. Now it's pretty much all we make is Striker now. And,
hey,
trying to
you got to go with
catch
what
up
you
with
can
some
go
of
with,
that. But we were
Yeah.
honored. There was only like six or eight American whiskeys on the list, and none of the other ones were craft. They were all legacy distilleries, and
Yeah.
so we were lucky. I think that was the only time, only the second time a Texas whiskey had made the list, and it was Balcones lineage the year before. So
Right.
very good company to be in. So we were honored.
As you should. So, and for a peat head smoked peat head person for Scotch, like I am, your Revenant Oak is your peated version,
Yes.
right?
Yep. And we do some fun stuff there. There's several American peated single malts out there, but most of them are made with imported peated malt, and that's totally fine. Nothing wrong with that. And but we wanted to kind of nerd out a little bit and really kind of have our hands on every part of the process. And so we are doing our own peating. And so we're sourcing peat from several different places for many years, strictly Ireland. And so we found a
Okay.
really nice source of peat from Coppabawn, Ireland, and really enjoyed it. But now we're using a couple different varieties, including some American peat.
Okay.
And yep, we've got some Dakota peat. Actually, there's some big peat bogs up in North Dakota, and
Yeah.
so
Okay.
it's funny. It doesn't come in the brick form that we need, so we have to make our own bricks. I guess they harvest it with machines instead of
Right.
a shovel, and so it comes loose, and so we've got to then brick it back, and so we're
Make
actually
mud
making
pies
our
and
own.
let them dry in Texas sun.
Exactly. We're making our own peat bricks and drying them out in the sun and then burning them to smoke our grain. So we love doing things the hard way at Andalusia, if you haven't noticed.
That's okay. That's okay.
Uh,
Well, goodness. So, as far as American single malt as a category, it is booming big, and I think there's still some discussion on what is an American single malt expression.
sure.
And I know I'm still learning it because I've got Scotch down, believe me. And there are a lot of similarities. And what I try to explain to people is this may be American single malt, but it's not Scotch. It really isn't Scotch. It has its own flair, flavor, continuity. There are some that taste very similar, but I think it is very important to just have the category of itself, huh?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And loosely, we've got what we call American single malts now, but we're really excited that TTB is in the final stages of creating the American single malt category. So you'll actually see that on the front of bottles. Awesome. Thank you, Leanne, for putting that up. But the American Single Malt Whiskey Commission is an awesome organization founded by the members like Westland and Stranahan's and Westward and Virginia Distilling, and we're a proud member as well. And they're really kind of helping shape and form the law and the kind of the rules that TTB is proposing. And during the public comment period, we were very active during that, and so that period is now passed, and so TTB is in their final formulation. And I think this is very close to what we're going to see from TTB. This is kind of what the American Single Malt Whiskey Commission would like to see. And so it's not, like you say, it's not too far off of a lot of the Scotch rules, but also sort of mimic some of those classic TTB whiskey laws. Like distilling at 160 proof or less and bottling
Yeah.
at 80 proof or above. Those are just classic TTB laws. And so I think the commission didn't want to recreate whiskey in the TTB sense. And so I think it was important to them to kind of still, remain in the normal realms of the overall category of whiskey that TTB has.
Yeah.
But there's a few things that none of the other, American whiskey categories have, like distilled entirely at one distillery.
Right.
That's definitely a Scotch thing. That's, none of the, bourbon, none of those have to do anything like that. A lot of the categories do have, like a grain requirement. So the 100% malted barley isn't so unusual. That distilled at one distillery and then the cask size, that's pretty unusual, as well.
Yeah.
For an American category at least. So it's kind of like a hybrid of a classic TTB whiskey category and the kind of what the Scots have.
Yeah. And I noticed, I think it gives the because there isn't a prescription of a pot still, it gives the liberty to, be able to use a column still or coffee or whatever types of stills that someone may have available to them or be able to use instead of just maybe the traditional pot still.
Yep. Nothing about an age statement. I think that was hotly debated, to be honest. And I still think there's a lot of folks probably on the other side of that fence. I'm pretty much on the fence, to be honest. I can see benefits in both directions. I think an age statement would guarantee a little more quality for the category. Having said that, man, I've tasted some incredible 9-month-old single malts. Not many, to be honest, but it's possible. I'd hate to rule a fine beverage out just because it's not old enough. Now, most 9-month-old single malts are not going to be that great. I'll be perfectly honest, but hey, on the right spirit, the right cask, the right environment, it can happen. Especially in somewhat smaller cask. I wouldn't say baby cask, but maybe a 15 or a 20 barrel cask in a hot weather, it could be done. So,
well, climate certainly does have a big influence on it. As you were talking about, distill in a barrel or a cask in whether it's your container or your new rickhouse compared to the Highlands, is going to be quite different compared to Virginia, compared to Seattle. There's a lot of differences in there. And I can see that already, having tasted that variation. I think that has an indelible thumbprint on that taste and that almost a regionality, if you will, of to where it kind of even mimics the regionality of Scotch in a sense. Your Texas whiskeys are maturing super fast and hot because of that climate, as opposed to something more temperate. Do you think that the category itself is going to get into some type of regionality, or if that's just something that is going to be a trait of the taste?
I wouldn't be surprised at all. Especially being, in such an extreme, climate environment that we are. I can recognize, if somebody's aging something in Vermont or something like that, it's going to be very different. American Single Malt is going to be a lovely wide category, and I think that's fantastic. That might be one minor critique I have of bourbon, is that the laws that have kept it so good for all these years are also constraining it somewhat now that people want to be a little more creative. Now, I'm really glad the laws were there, or else bourbon wouldn't be what it is today. It would have been dumbed down a long time ago. And so it's great, but it's constraining. And so I think we're going to see a lot more variation. Talking about, the aging environment, we like to say, 5 years in Texas is, 7 years in Kentucky is 9 years in Scotland or something like that. And the conventional wisdom is, Texas has hot summers, but I think that's just a very small part of it, to be honest. Kentucky gets hot summers too. Really, I think where our aging gets extended is in the winter time. We have about a week or two of winter here, and it just randomly
right
pops in, and we get and so we'll get a couple cold fronts, and it can definitely have some snaps. But in reality, I mean, it's on Christmas Day, it's going to be 75 degrees, and in my shipping container, it's going to be 100. And so it's a full on aging day. But in a Kentucky rickhouse in December, it might be 30 degrees. And one thing we found is that nothing happens in a barrel when it's 30 degrees. I mean, it is in suspended animation at that point. It is not, quote unquote, aging that much at all. Kind of the analogy I like to tell people, and it's kind of a direct analogy, is we're dissolving sugar from these barrels, caramelized wood sugars. So imagine dissolving sugar in hot tea or dissolving sugar in iced tea. Yeah. And any fine Southerner will tell you put sugar in iced tea, you can sit there and stir it for 10 minutes and it's still there and hasn't dissolved. And so that's exactly kind of what's happening in these barrels. You kind of get this state of suspended animation during the extremely cold periods. And we just skip over all that in Texas. And so that's what gives us that extra aging time, somewhat the summer, but I think more so the winter.
It's just the continuation through the winter. Yeah. That totally aging, makes sense.
Not like 10 months like in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm. Wow. This is so interesting. I hope everybody, and I apologize for not chatting up a whole lot with everybody on the chat, but good gravy. This is some really good stuff. Cool. I did have so I'm on the Palo Duro right now, and I would like I had a question. Someone asked me if that is new oak. Jim was asking, is it new oak and Palo Duro?
Yep. It's not necessarily always going to be, but I think all the batches we've released and the one you have is going to be new oak.
Yeah.
And so that's just to fill everybody in. That's all Texas malt, and so. We wish that we could use all Texas malt for all of our whiskeys. We would pay quite a bit more for it. I'd pay 50% more for Texas malt. But unfortunately, right now, Texas malt is about 300% more than our other malts that we can get. And so we'd love to support the industry. And so we put a little bit of Texas malt in all of our whiskeys, like all of our specialty grain, our Munich malt, our chocolate malt, our roasted and kiln malts. They're all from Texas. And so, that's the best we can do at this point. And then we also then do Palo Duro. We do a couple barrels of that every year. And that's 100% Texas malt, really trying to support the industry. It costs us a fortune to make. We really can't charge any more for it. But we're hoping one day we can kind of meet in the middle with them and eventually make all of our whiskeys all Texas malt is our goal.
Oh, that'd be cool. Mainly from the Panhandle, right?
It is really, yeah. And any ones that are fairly boutique and small and can maybe satisfy more kind of the homebrew market and the very, very nano market, brewery market. But they can't make enough malt for us right now, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
we're ever so glad that you're doing that, because I am really digging this Palo Duro, and I have a little surprise for you, because we have a friend who's going to join us here.
Who's that?
Because he is responsible for getting me my Andalusia. If I'm not running whiskey back from Houston like I'm Smokey and the Bandit on I-10, it would be my favorite mule, and that would be Destin.
Hey, look at that handsome face.
I know the beard is amazing, right?
I haven't had enough single malt for this right now.
So for all of you who don't know, this is my dear friend Dustin. He's part of my secret Scotch group that's here in town, and he used to live here in Baton Rouge, and then Texas gobbled him up, and he's now practically neighbors with Ty, and just like gets to hang out with them. And I'm just gonna pop on up to Blanco and go to Andalusia like you dog. But what he does is he just August, he was here, and he brought some really good goodies back. And so buddy, thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to be talking about some of those specialty bottlings now, because I know you can really geek into that with your inner workings with different whiskey clubs and doing barrel picks with them. So y'all talk about specialty bottlings.
We'll start with thanks for having me on the show. We've been friends for a long time. We've shared a lot of really good Scotch.
Yeah, we
really
have.
good single malt. So Andalusia has been a favorite of mine for a long time. Started with Striker because it was the only thing that was American Single Malt and Smoke that tasted good at the time when I found it for me. And now that's what I'm drinking tonight. I'm actually drinking one finished in Madeira cask, so another specialty that nobody else can get their hands on. Sorry, but it's too good. So I only have one bottle left, so I've been kind of babying it. But yeah, Baton Rouge was fun, but it's also really fun. It's a tough 20-minute drive up to Andalusia's distillery.
Oh, I'm hating it for you. I'm hating it for you.
Yeah, I know he was. You were in East Texas for a little while, and yeah, now you're just right down the road, man. So now he's like Cliff Clavin. He's got a seat at the end of the bar in the tasting room all the time. And,
well, I have to watch myself, so I'm in there. I won't tell you how often I'm in there, but I often wear an Andalusia hat just because I always have a hat on, and I'm not wearing it tonight. But we go in on Saturdays every now and then, and people will start asking questions at the bar, and I'm like, I'll answer them because they're generic questions that I've just can answer. About the 12th question in, I'm like, oh crap, I'm wearing a hat. They think I work here. I really got to go sit outside.
We'll just say you're an unpaid brand ambassador. So
Kevin and Colin just are like, yeah, whatever. Dustin's in the corner. It's fine. So, sorry.
That's awesome.
You've been a part of several barrel picks from a couple different groups and liquor stores now.
Yeah, I've done a few.
2 or 3, I think, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we have another one coming out. So another one for the Houston Gulf Coast area is coming out. I think you're coming up to taste that in a couple weeks. But yeah, I've been a few. I have one for my own whiskey group, one for a store, and then I have a few bottles from the Barrel Outlaws, if anybody knows who they are here in Central Texas. They've got a pick or two, some Revenant Oak. So for all you peated fans, you can get peated picks. They're great. So
and then
there's so much fun. It's so hard. Sorry, Ty. It's so hard to pick a barrel from Andalusia because I'm a peat head. Leanne, you know that.
Yeah.
The best ones on the table I often pick are Revenant Oak, and then I'm like, well, shoot, we're in bourbon country. How do I sell this? You know, how do I convince them that it's not going to blow their palate out with peat? And it really doesn't. Revenant Oak's a great entry point for anybody that's looking to try peat without going the full Isla route. It's an incredible transition to, and Ty can talk to the specifics of the peat load on that, but it's a great one to pick up if you're wanting to dabble into something peated without losing all the other fun stuff in the whiskey.
And it's like I mentioned the gateway whiskey earlier. This is kind of our gateway peated whiskey. It's, I'm not a big peat head. I'm coming around on it. My business partner Tommy loves all the big peat monsters, and so we kind of met in the middle on this one. And the peat that we're using, I really enjoy. I think peat is a wild monster, and there's some really funny, flavor descriptions that you get from peat. And one of the things that I don't particularly like from peat is the iodine part. And that what I really love about the peat that we're getting is it doesn't really have that iodine component. And, it's got the phenolics, it's got kind of that classic, like that Lafroig wood smoke, but it doesn't have that iodine. And so that's why I can really enjoy it, even though I'm not really a peat head myself. But I would agree. I think it's a really good introductory whiskey for peat. You don't have to search for it. It's not like hidden, but it's not going to melt your face. It's not going to blow you away if you're not quite ready for that yet.
Yeah,
and
I
if
find
you are,
it much more like floral and vegetal. Like it's and I would imagine, especially if you're getting it from the Dakotas or even from Ireland, unless you're getting it straight on the coast, which it doesn't sound like you are. That element, whatever decayed to make the peat, wasn't as wasn't the element that brought that iodine.
Right, that brininess.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to say, if you are really into peat, we do release. So our mash bill for Revenant Oak and for Striker only involves about 10% smoked malt. So on the surface, it doesn't sound like very much, but due to our pot still and our cuts, we really get a lot of smoke out of that. And so we do release 100% peated malt once a year as well. And so for the peat heads, for you guys, and man, it is like Octomore level. It is insanely how peaty it is.
Bring it.
And so we actually want to send it off and get it tested just so we can get a number on it that we can say, because it's just off the charts. And then we also release a super smoked striker as well. So instead of 10% peated malt, that one, or smoked malt, that one's like 60% smoked malt. And we're going to release that this year on the anniversary party. So that's one of those tasting room onlys that you're going to have to get your mule to bring back for you, Leanne.
I no doubt he will be there with bells on. I am sure. If not, you better clear your calendar and make sure you're there, Dustin.
I wouldn't miss it.
So on the striker, so there's smoked malt. What's your char on the cask?
So we've experimented with several. Number 3 char, number 4 char, and then something else we're experimenting with is a heavily toasted barrel, and then a light char after that. So the difference between toasting and charring, a toast will be a very small fire inside of the barrel, and the fire doesn't actually touch the wood really at all. And that fire will burn for like 45 minutes and slowly toast deep into the wood. And that's like typical in the wine industry for toasted barrels. Mm-hmm. But for charred barrels, they'll build a raging inferno inside of the barrel. And the fire will definitely be touching the wood. The barrel might even catch on fire. But the whole thing is like 40 seconds. Not 40 minutes, but 40 seconds. And so it's a very different treatment of the wood. And so classically, wine barrels are toasted, spirits barrels are charred, but we're really kind of, experimenting with a lot of toasting as well, because the toasting really gives you more of that red layer. The char itself, gives you no color and flavor whatsoever. It actually removes color and flavor like carbon. But right behind that char layer, you'll have a red layer that's been toasted essentially, very quickly toasted, but it's fairly small. But with a toasted barrel, you get a much deeper red layer in your barrel. And so you can get a lot more color and flavor. And so we're trying barrels that have been fully toasted and then charred to like a number 1 or number 2 char after that, just so we can have some char in the barrel. And, the jury's still out. Unfortunately, experimenting in whiskey takes like 5 years to get results. And we're still kind of working through some of those. But I'd say most of what's on the market is probably a number 3 or number 4 char of most of our spirits.
So, well, I want to we're going to see if, hopefully I won't break things here, but I want to talk about the pot still, your original pot still, because I understand that you're in the process of getting a new one. But this is the most adorable thing in all of the state of Texas. I have to tell you. When I walk in,
you love its little jacket.
I love its little wool, like its jumper. Like I'm all things Scotland right now, coming off of this trip. Yeah. It's like, oh, it's little wee jumper. It's like this woolen jump. Y'all, it is just adorable. I'm like, that made this liquid. That made this whiskey. When I tell you it's adorable, it's so adorable.
Funny story, Leanne, that wool blanket is wool, and it's not really it's like raw wool. And like, we raise sheep on our farm. So if you look out the window, like actually this morning, we had twin lambs born, maybe, 50 yards from the still, because they're out in the pasture right nearby. And so it's really cool. But that raw wool blanket will heat up during a distillation, and it's so raw that it actually this is kind of weird, but it smells like sheep. I mean, and so it's so like authentic to the farm. It's so funny. Like, we'll turn the still on, and I'm like, all right, already smelling sheep already. And that's the smell coming from the farm in general too, because of all the sheep we have. So
Well, and you look at the shape of it and like at the reflux points, and where things are moving up into that bulbous area and then coming back down. That's a tiny neck,
Yep.
to then go up into the neck. And then is it, I can't remember, and my picture doesn't really show, but it's a descending line arm.
Slightly, and we can
Slightly.
vary that, but we have chosen to descend it a little bit so that we can capture a lot of those richer, heavier
Yeah, a little
oils, so they don't
heavier.
run back into the still. Yep, exactly.
Right.
You'll
Well,
be
and
excited to learn, Leanne, that we bought another still just like that. So there now she
really?
now has a twin sitting
Ah,
right next to her. That's exactly
oh
like
my
her. So
gosh. Are you going to use
it's
it
very
as
cool.
a wash spirit stills or?
No, so we have a brand new. The building that you can see on the right has
Yeah.
been completed, and it has a
Okay.
new 1,000-gallon Vendome still in it, and that's
Ah,
our stripping still. And then we use our 2 all copper pot stills as our 2 finishing stills, both.
okay.
So those are
Okay.
only going to be for finishing spirits.
Okay. Awesome. So, and like you were talking about stripping, that's basically your wash still. Like I'm thinking Scotch
Yeah,
World,
yeah.
sorry.
Sorry. So a wash
And then
still and
and
then a
and
spirit.
then
Yep.
in the spirit stills, the two. Oh my goodness. Interesting. So, any thoughts on being able, like how you've been able to maybe, like, how is that distillate going to be the same, or are you shooting for the same, or are you just trying to, because that's all different now,
Yeah, no,
I mean,
it'll most certainly be different, and
yeah,
so it's going to be a kind of a nervous moment, I think, too, when we first try and we're sampling some of the newer spirit, But I feel like if we keep our mash consistent, we keep our recipes consistent, and then really kind of keep our cuts consistent. I mean, I think we're going to be in the same neighborhood, but I'm not really. We're a craft product. Our dump batches are maybe 3 or 4 barrels always. And so you're gonna get some variation from our product. And that's what we want. We want you to taste something familiar, and we want you to be able to know, if you know what Striker is, then we want you to know and recognize Striker.
right,
But we also don't mind at all if you're able to pick out a little bit of variation from one bottle to the next. We definitely do our blends, as consistent as we can. But when your dumps are only 3 or 4 barrels at a time, you can only be so consistent. What's funny, there's a small distillery near us, and they just released a very small batch, and it's mostly source product, and that's fine. But it's like 70 barrels. It's like, that's not very small at all in my mind.
no, not at all.
And so this is actually a very small batch.
Oh man, no, this is very cool. I mean, the idea of what all you're doing. So let's talk about the bottle and bond.
Oh, I'm glad you brought it up, because I was going to put Ty on the spot because I have a bottle sitting next to me.
Yeah, that might be my favorite drinking whiskey right there. Just of all of our products.
And why is that?
That's funny. That product started as our flagship product. That was going to be the Andalusia Single Malt. And as we made it and sat on it, we made other products. We made, the smoked whiskeys and the peated whiskeys. And we kind of just struggled with how we were going to sell and kind of package and present that product. Because I see other distilleries making a similar product that sometimes struggle to present it. Like a good example is Stranahan's. I feel for a long time they called it Colorado whiskey. That was kind of how they tagged it. And I think that was fine, but it didn't really mean anything as far as what it was. Obviously, it's from Colorado, and that's fine. But I don't think they're using that tag anymore, actually, because it's kind of hard to say. Well, it's kind of like Scotch, but it's aged in a new barrel, and so you end up doing this long description to people. And so we kind of just held off releasing bottle and bond for a long time because we couldn't really figure out a way to sell it. And then finally, it became 4 years old. And we realized that no one had ever released a bottle and bond whiskey in Texas, and it was tasting great. And so we kind of jumped at that opportunity and saw an opportunity to present it and package it, and as something. And so we released it as the bottle and bond. It still has the identity issues of single malt whiskey aged in a new barrel, but obviously that's getting a lot better
Right.
as American single malts are becoming more well known. So we're not worried about that as much anymore. But it's really special. It doesn't have any smoke element to it, and then we use a pretty healthy amount of chocolate malt. And all the home brewers that are listening tonight, watching tonight, will know what I'm talking about. But chocolate malt, really, there's no chocolate in it. They'll just take regular malted barley and they'll roast it kind of like a coffee roaster, and they'll get it to the color of milk chocolate. And so you'll have all these beautiful roasty flavors that come from it, but also just tons of really cool chocolate flavors. So the finish on Bottle and Bond is all, dark chocolate, Tootsie Rolls, just like it's actually kind of a beautiful milk chocolate that kind of descends into dark chocolate. And then all this happens in the finish of the flavor of the whiskey. And then that chocolate stays with you for like an hour after you're done. You're just walking around tasting chocolate, it's awesome. But it's not like sweet. It's not like a chocolate flavored whiskey. So I don't want to scare anybody away from that, because it's clearly a malt.
So chocolate malt and Scotch is a Signet. Glenmorangie Signet is known for its chocolate malt. Yeah. And Holyrood Distillery over in Scotland is about to release their first whiskey this month. And they have been mad scientists with a lot of different yeast strains and different types of grains and different types of malts. And they've done one that's I want to say it's like 25 or 30%. So it's interesting of how
that's a lot. Yeah,
that's a lot.
Yeah,
it's been interesting.
Like anything over 10 is a lot. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just so. Dustin, tell us what you think about it, and because it was one of the bottles you brought me, and I'm ever so happy.
I don't know how you got one of those. I don't have very many left. I think I bought every bottle that landed in Houston on its very short distribution cycle.
I'm special.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna rock that boat.
An accident. Bottle and Bond. It's this year's Paladuro is what I've been telling everybody is what an American single malt should be in my own palate. Mm-hmm. But for the Bottle and Bond's right there with it. I enjoy the proof. It's an easy one to get your bourbon friends to try that. Oh, single malt. I'm not a Scotch guy. Well, I didn't tell you Scotch. I said it's single malt. It's not necessarily, it's not the same thing. And, we all have our Scotches that we use to kind of convert those non-believers, the Balvenis and the Glendros of the world. I use this stuff. I use Striker for people who say smoke is terrible. Yep. I use Revenant Oak, and it's easy here in Central Texas to me say, look, it's Texas stuff, man. You know how us Texans get.
They'll get loud and proud. You better believe I'll drink that.
The Bottle and Bond's great. I buy it by the case. I hoard it. I drink on it all year till it comes back out. One of Ty's sales guys in Houston knows. I'm like, look, Mario, don't you sell that without telling me it's out, because I got to make phone calls to get it. So it's fantastic. I mean, it is everything for me that a single malt should be that isn't from Scotland. And not to put Ty on the spot, but he started talking about chocolate, so I have to put him on the spot for his charity bottle that's currently going on. If you follow Andrew, you've probably seen it. I'll let him just explain it, but it's charity to the Maui wildfires over in Hawaii. I'll let Ty kind of explain that in the Rickhouse series. That's more unobtainium that no one on this chat can get. I'm sorry. But if you come to Central Texas, I'll get you set up. But Ty, talk about that bottle and the story behind it, because it's a cool story. And there's also other barrels of it that may be in Hawaii, if I remember correctly.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, this is newest released in our Rickhouse series. And we, in our kind of craft beer background, had befriended the owners of Maui Brewing Company and had visited them on vacations over to Hawaii. And so had collaborated with them right before the pandemic. So this is January of 2020. the owners of Maui Brewing flew to Texas, and we brewed a batch of their Hiwa coconut porter. So any craft beer fans watching probably know about the Maui coconut porter. It's a beautiful beer. A porter is a very dark beer, kind of like a stout. And so we brewed a batch of that beer and then made a whiskey out of it. Similar to the Bottle and Bond, it's just this beautiful chocolate bomb because how dark the beer was. And we've just been sitting on it and aging it, and just kind of thinking about how we were going to release it, and really didn't have any ideas. It was coming to age though, so we knew we probably needed to release it this year. And then the fires happened, and then so we've decided to go ahead and release that, and we're donating $50 from every bottle to Maui Fire Relief. So that's most of the price of the bottle. And so unfortunately that's going to be tasting room only, and there's probably almost gone, probably another 2 or 3 weeks left. But we felt it was the least we could do, having worked with them. Now there's a little bit more. There's another version of it that will be released at a later date, probably next year. And that was a smoked version. So, Striker, I described that kind of layering of woods. We did that with Hawaiian woods. And so we got, there's barbecue groups all over the internet, and you can order, woods for barbecuing from all over the world. And so we got 3 of the most common Hawaii barbecue woods. So Kiowa, which is kind of similar to mesquite, lychee, the fruit lychee wood, and then guava. So we got 3 different Hawaiian woods and smoked this whiskey as if it was Striker. So we're releasing the non-smoked version this year. We felt a little weird about releasing the smoked version this year. I know that's kind of a bad joke almost, but maybe too soon. But so we did not release the smoked one this year. We're going to release that one later. And then we made 4 barrels total. We kept 2 and then shipped two barrels to Maui. And Maui Brewing has those barrels aging on. Actually, they're aging up in the mountains. And I'm sure everyone saw that there were some terrible fires in Lahaina, but there were also fires in Kihei, which is where the brewery is. And they were keeping they're like 100 barrels of there, because they also have a distillery there, and our whiskey in a old World War II concrete bunker up in the mountains of Hawaii, of Maui. And all the tree, and surrounded by eucalyptus trees, and all of that burned. All around the bunker burned, but all the barrels in the bunker survived. Wow. It's amazing. He sent me a picture of a smoldering concrete bunker, and he said, "Man, your barrels are still in there, and they're okay." And so we're really excited to be able to taste those as well. They're going to take a lot longer. In Hawaii, temperatures don't fluctuate very much and kind of stay the same all the time. And so it's kind of getting a slow age, but it's not having a winter. But still, in general, it's a little bit slower than us.
Wow.
But we're really excited to be able to compare the Hawaii aged whiskeys to the Texas aged whiskeys as well. So I know that was a whole lot. I don't know if you were ready for all of that.
that
it's a good story. It's a good bottle to charity, and supports our neighbors' relatives, our neighbors way out in the ocean. But that's why I brought it up. But it is, I'm not a chocolate person. I've had plenty of dinners at Leanne's house over Scotch tastings, and I don't do seafood and chocolate. And I'm down to my last Rickhouse bottle on this Maui beer.
Nice.
Distillate. So, one of the guys at the distillery is like, "Dude, it tastes like Tootsie Rolls." I'm like, "That's not how you sell me anything, man. You know better." But it is really good. It really is.
Well, and if I could remind everybody, we're talking about a lot of, if you don't mind doing a quick plug, Leanne.
Absolutely.
We all of the bottles are, obviously a lot of the special ones we're talking about are available in our tasting room in Blanco only. But you can buy any of our core whiskey lineup, the Striker, the Remnant Oak, and the Triple Distilled on our website, AndalusiaWhiskey.com, and they will ship it directly to your house. Yep. We've got a great online partner we're working with, Big Thirst. And so essentially how it works is we've got to ship the whiskey out of state to a state that's more friendly for this kind of thing. And then they will ship it to you from a non-Texas state, essentially. But it'll get there pretty quick.
Yep. I put your website in the chat, as well as your Instagram, so folks can follow you there. When can you sell in Louisiana?
So we just sent,
this guy doesn't get here as often as I need him to.
Yeah, no, we just sent samples to the home office of Republic Distribution in Louisiana. And so
Okay.
we're working on them, and you know,
I
it's kind of
will
a
go
tough
make a phone
time of
call
year. So
tomorrow.
it might be next year, because it's kind of a tough time in the year to do anything new. But
Yeah.
we're working on them and just sent them samples. And
Okay.
so yeah, we're trying to expand into several new states: New Mexico, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Colorado, and maybe a couple others. So
Because I have to, I don't know that if you know this, but we are professionals down here. We do not spill alcohol.
Yes.
That is a cardinal sin, and we are professionals. We have a whole street called Bourbon. That's fine for those folks, but you know, I'll look real cute on Royal while I drink my single malt. I'm just saying.
Oh, I'd love to do a Louisiana sales trip. So
well, I'm gonna tell you, you
waiting.
come down here and we'll bring you to the swamp. We'll take you to the camp.
All right.
Ooh, if he gets to the camp before I do, I'm not bringing any bottles to you anymore.
We just need to get here now that is not the surface of the sun hot. You can come and enjoy the time of the camp. A friend of mine and I did a Camp Drammer review of an ardent American in the boat in the swamp, and we were competing with the bullfrogs and being able to talk. It was awesome, you know. So, but yeah, no, seriously, we would love to have you come down here. And I know I was telling you earlier about how big and active our Bourbon Society of Baton Rouge is, and we have a collective within that is very dedicated to single malts. And that's part of what I want to do, especially in this American Single Malt series, is to make sure that, you know, everybody, if you're a Scotch lover, this is going to be in your wheelhouse, and you're going to be surprised by some of these. If you're in the bourbon lane, give this a try, because it is a very good bridge to Scotch, but it is again, it's not Scotch. I mean, it's you're getting some of you've got a lot of sweetness on some of this that would suck in a bourbonite real quick, you know, because there's a real good, the flavor is spot on. But for the malters, you just have that underlying flavor profile that isn't over the top and doesn't necessarily taste like corn pops. So thank you for that. And the other thing I love, again, we'll kind of circle back here because we're running. Thank you for letting us run a little late, but the transparency of the age and the fact that you're presenting at 50 ABV, you know, just absolutely does it for all of us. That's
those at the soul.
It's spectacular. Just having that good.
Yeah, we've never released anything less than 100 proof, and we don't plan on it anytime soon. So
that's fantastic. So Andrew Butler, you have to understand, you rate there, Ty, because Andrew is in outside London, and it's working on 3:20 his time, AM. And he was like, "Are you ever going to have any UK distribution?"
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Andrew. Man, I hope so. And it's just something I'm just going to have to wrap my head around, exporting and all that. It's something we haven't even looked into. But right now, we're just still trying to fulfill the Texas market. And we're not really pushing very hard at all in DFW. And we've got a long way to go in Texas. Not to mention other, friendly whiskey states. But, man, it is something we're definitely looking into and into exporting as soon as we can.
Yeah, and Michael's asking about Total Wine in Texas. I know that that's where I picked up Striker when I needed it to take it to Scotland.
Yeah, and retail right now we were only in Texas. So if you're not in Texas, your best bet would be ordering it on the website probably.
Yep. And definitely super easy to do that. Anyway. Well, guys, I just want to thank you so much for both of you being on and joining me with this, and to kick off this American Single Malt series. Like I said, I was really hoping you would be the first one, Ty. So very personal, so very nice. your place, just in those gorgeous rolling hills west of Austin, is just, I mean, it is the gateway to the hill country, and it's just all that's bright in the world. So mad props for all that you're doing there. And I want to see if y'all could hang back, and we'll say goodbye after this. I say bye to folks here, but any other thing you want to add for tonight?
No, just if we have any fine folks watching that are in the Texas Hill Country, please come by and see us. Yeah, it's a beautiful area. It's a lot of tourism, and it's the wine country. So there's 40 wineries within 40 miles of us, and so we're partnering with a lot of them to do brandy and aging in their barrels and a lot of fun stuff. So it's just a kind of a really fun, cool area. And the second largest craft brewery in Texas is 5 minutes down the road at Real Ale, and so it's a fun spot. So we'd like to invite everyone out.
And if you go, you're probably going to see Dustin at the end of the bar.
Sitting at the end of the bar.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'll be there.
Yeah.
What else am I going to do? It's wine country. I got to find whiskey.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. No, this is great. This is super. Yeah, and if you can't find Andalusia, find a friend who can get it for you. Again, go to the website, check the chat. I'll also put it in the comment section on the site all together. But guys, thank y'all so much. We're gonna do a big sludgy y'all with the rest of this Paladuro. Hang back, and I will see you guys in a bit.
Slunchy y'all.
Y'all, was this cool or what? These guys are super. This whiskey is incredible. And for those who can't get it, Andrew, I will make sure I get some over to you. I promise. Seek it out. Some really great things are coming down the pipe with American Single Malt. I'm gonna just stew over this a couple of times to get more nuggets of information out of this great conversation tonight with Ty. Special thanks for him and my buddy Dustin. Hope y'all enjoyed it. I will see you next week, and we were going to be talking about some more American whiskey, but that is made in the Irish style. So I think that this triple distilled is going to make a repeat. And of course, I'm going to have my buddy Stacy from Four Leaf Whiskey join me. So I will see you next Tuesday on Scotch on the Bayou Live. Until then, Sandra, y'all.